Hello, 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 and welcome. I can't quite believe I'm saying this. Welcome to the Pregnant and Strong podcast, episode 1. This podcast is going to be all about uh, keeping mentally and physically strong in pregnancy. And I mean that in the whole sense of the word. It's going to be about having conversations with people. So just think of this. I was actually listening to a podcast with one of my favorite fitness influencers yesterday, Laura Biceps. I don't know whether anyone knows who she is. And she's just started a new podcast, and she was just talking about it's just a recording of a chat between friends. So today's chat is just me by myself. So that's going to be a little bit different. But most episodes will have different guests on them. Some people I know really well that I'm getting to come on and chat and share their wisdom and knowledge and expertise with you. And some people I know less well and I've kind of viewed from afar, and hopefully I can bring their expertise to you. But the theme is all about pregnant and strong. Anyone who knows me or follows my work, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what pregnant and strong is and what that means to me in a second. But this podcast was really born from wanting to bring all these incredible conversations I'm having with incredible women to a wider audience. Because sometimes you have these chats with people and they might be your friends, they might be people that you work with, they might just be people you're passing and you know, have a fleeting conversation with, and you think, I really wish I captured that and I'd be able to share that with, the people that I come into contact with. So the idea behind this is just to capture the essence of those conversations. And I think it's super important in pregnancy to share all these different conversations that we're having, all these different chats. And hopefully I'm going to bring some new information to you, but also I just want you to have a space you can come to if you are pregnant or postpartum, or trying to conceive, or, on this journey at some point, and feel like you are being related to, and feel like, oh, I've been waiting for someone to say that, or I really needed to hear that, or, oh my goodness, that's someone who really knows what they're talking about and they're telling me it's okay too. So those are the kind of things that I'm hoping to bring to you. And today's episode, like I said, is just little old me. And that's going to be a little bit different because the next few episodes after this, we're going to have guests and I'm going to be talking to them and interviewing them. And we're going to be not really interviewing, we're going to be having a chat about lots of different themes. But today, I just wanted to kind of share my journey, how I ended up here, and what pregnant and strong means to me. And then we'll talk a little bit about generally why I'm so passionate about movement and exercise and physical activity in pregnancy. So that I think will be really interesting to share, especially if anyone's listening who maybe is pregnant at the moment and isn't currently doing much physical activity. Maybe you did and something's happened to mean that you haven't, or something's changed, or, any of those kind of circumstances. So I'm hoping I'll bring to light some key kind of benefits to and motivators to my work. And then I'm going to end every episode with some resources and people to follow, some practical tips, because although I want this to just be a chat, and just that's what I love about podcasts, is just listening into people's conversations, basically. I want you to leave with some concrete things that you can do and try and have a go at, and that will hopefully help in some way. So that's kind of how today is going to run. And hopefully I'll just ease into this. And again, when I was listening to this podcast yesterday, they were talking about we've never done this before. It could be scrappy, it could be messy, but it's just hopefully going to bring to light some interesting things and highlight some interesting conversations. And I'm hoping that's what this is going to do for you. So yeah, be prepared for the messiness. So I'll introduce myself now. My name is Iona. I currently living in London and I've got a son, he's 2, and I'm over halfway through my second pregnancy and my baby's due in March. And really, my journey began a long time ago with fitness. I have been an endurance runner for a long, long time. I lost my best friend very, very suddenly at age 26. And I think I was into running before that. It's weird. It's not that long ago. It's 15 years ago, 14 years ago. But I was sort of into running and into fitness before that. But that moment was pretty pivotal in terms of my journey and how it shaped the rest of my 20s and onwards, really. I started doing a lot of long distance running. I started fundraising. I fundraised a lot of money for a charity we set up after my best friend Natalie's death. So it really became the kind of spark and motivation for what I did next. And since then, I've run nearly 20 marathons and ultra marathons and countless half marathons and park runs, 5Ks, 10Ks, all that jazz. And then really developed a love of strength training probably in COVID, and started training at a local gym and really, really loved it. I'd been sort of going to the gym before that, but nothing to really focusing on my running. But then I really, really got into strength training around COVID and post-COVID. And I was a primary school teacher in my previous life. So I worked in a school in London for 15 years. I went from being a student teacher at this school to being acting head during COVID and then eventually deputy head before I left. And in 2022, made a big jump, a scary jump, and left teaching and went traveling around the world with my new husband, and we just got married. And me being me, I decided straight away, I'd always had this itch for the previous few years to move into something new. Not in just anything, but something in the fitness space. So as soon as I left teaching, we embarked on this crazy world trip and I decided to retrain as a personal trainer. So I did my qualification online. I was traveling around the States and I was, like filming in all these gyms and getting my husband and me to film and be, case studies and all that kind of thing. Finally qualified in January of 2023 and found out I was pregnant in the same month. And this is really what sparked my work since then. So I sort of started out just personal training, mainly women, but not really focusing on pregnancy and postpartum. I did my pregnancy and postpartum qualification whilst I was pregnant. I really did the qualification, A, to upskill myself and add another string to my bow, and B, because I was doing a lot of CrossFit at the time and getting a lot of mixed messages. And this is really where my passion for the next almost 3 years work now came from, is in the CrossFit world, if you're lucky and you go to a great CrossFit gym, there's a lot of CrossFit athletes now training while they're pregnant, training postpartum, and really kind of paving the way with that, as there are with many athletes. But for the general population, there was still a lot of mixed messaging around what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. In terms of running, again, it was mixed. It was, high impact. You shouldn't really be doing it, this kind of thing. So I really tried to upskill myself for my own training. And that really fueled my desire to help other women like me. And I had a really, really straightforward pregnancy and birth first time round. I was really lucky. I was really physically active all the way through. My labor was fairly straightforward, and so was my birth and my recovery. So I also am very aware of many people listening might not have had that journey. And lots of the women I work with haven't had that journey. So it was really about upskilling myself for my own knowledge, but also trying to come up with a way of supporting women who weren't in the fitness space like me, being more physically active. And that is kind of where I landed and hopefully this really resonates with some of you listening, is you've got the fitness space. And by that, I mean people that go to the gym, they might do CrossFit, they might run, they might play sport, whatever that is, who have access to actually quite a lot of information now. And then you have people that just haven't set foot in a gym. They might be active, but they're not part of that fitness world. And I decided I was kind of less interested in the me's of the equation and more interested in the people that had barriers to being physically active in pregnancy. And that's when my work began, really. And since then, I have really developed my kind of Pregnant and Strong community. I don't want to say brand because but Pregnant and Strong community. And how that now looks under that umbrella is I design and coach classes. So the classes that I've designed at the gym I co-own in South West London, Element Fitness and Alchemy Space. And I coach at a couple of local places in South East London where I live. And I work with lots of online clients. I've also done some corporate work for Amazon where I've provided support for their pre and postnatal employees, a way that I thought was going to reach, more and more people working in the corporate space. It's been a journey, but it gets that message across and that support to further and wider, should I say. And I'm currently embarking on 2 exciting projects. One is a mentorship with the Active Pregnancy Foundation to develop a couple of projects I've been working on. One is an online platform for kind of core strength focused pregnancy workouts, if you like, amongst other things. And the other is my in-person classes. And the second exciting project is a research project I'm undertaking with a friend. And we are looking at the support that women get through their antenatal care and the knowledge and expertise midwives have in terms of physical activity. So hopefully from that intro, and that was a lot of talking from me, hopefully from that you can sort of see I'm trying to come at this issue, which is that many women, you take pregnancy out of the equation, only 1/3 of us in the UK are hitting our recommended physical activity for the week guidelines, which is 150 minutes. So without even being pregnant, we're behind in the UK. So by the time you're pregnant, you've got many other barriers to being physically active. It's no surprise that we're, kind of behind other countries and that we are struggling with this in the UK. So that's kind of, hopefully from what you've heard, you can see that I'm really just trying to get to that problem in lots of different ways. And that's really exciting. And this podcast is one of those ways, because hopefully by sharing these conversations, I can inspire and motivate and empower and educate more women to take up physical activity. And we're going to talk about kind of myths around physical activity during this series, but that might be one just to touch on now. This is when all the plans go out the window and I just go off on random tangents. This is what happens when you record something by yourself. But I think an important thing to note now, if you've actually tuned into this podcast, hopefully there's a reason why you've done that. If you're now thinking like, oh no, she's talking about CrossFit and marathons and all this, and this is just not me, and I'm so far away from there, I'm not actually doing any exercise at the moment. I want you to know that one of the biggest and most frustrating myths in the pregnancy exercise space is that if you don't already exercise, you shouldn't start. Okay. So there's a lot of scaremongering around that. Like if you haven't been to the gym, if you haven't been lifting weights, if you haven't been doing any exercise, definitely don't start. It's not safe. And that is simply not true. What we should be doing is encouraging women to take up physical activity. And by this, I don't mean you're 20 weeks pregnant and you've never lifted weights and you go to CrossFit. What I mean is a progressive lead in to physical activity. And resistance training is so integral to our overall health that whatever stage you're at, you can start doing very, very simple resistance training. Squats are resistance training. You don't have to add weight to start with. So I could talk about strength training and the importance of that until the cows come home. But my point being that hopefully, even if that's the one thing you take away from this first episode, is this whole notion of I've never exercised before, so I shouldn't, especially not if I'm pregnant, is simply not true. And though that's a key barrier and a key narrative and myth we need to break down. And I think what I would love to see in the future is this kind of link between the healthcare sector and the fitness space. And physios do an amazing job at this. I'm about to go for a physio appointment with my women's health physio, who's incredible. I'm actually hoping to get her on the podcast, so I might be able to persuade her when I see her on Saturday. She helped me so much in my first pregnancy. And from my experience of physios, they really help bridge that gap. But I am hoping that my work will do more around making this conversation and this piece around physical activity common practice to be spoken about in our midwife appointments. And anyone listening to this who's pregnant, I'd love to hear from you as I start this research project. How many of you were told about the benefits of physical activity in your midwife appointments? How many of you were asked about whether you were physically active? And if you were, how much detail was gone into? And I'm not talking about a 10-minute conversation about it. I think I was asked, and then it was a box ticking exercise. It was like, oh, do you do physical activity? Oh, yes, I'm pretty active. Okay, move on. And this is, by the way, no disrespect to midwives. They have an incredibly difficult job. And like most people working in public sector at the moment are very stretched. It's more about how they're trained and what they learn about, and the bigger picture around the benefits of exercise and physical activity in pregnancy, and how, in my view, it's a huge preventative strategy for many complications that can come. So when there is an opportunity for it to be spoken about at your midwife appointments, why is that opportunity not being taken? And that's the only contact a pregnant woman has with a healthcare professional, essentially, unless they have a high-risk pregnancy or they have private healthcare during their pregnancy. So this is a golden opportunity for us to have those conversations with women about their pregnancy and about their overall health in their pregnancy. So I think that is really, really important. And I think I just want to share now that I think it's the same when we talk about food and diet. Holding personal people responsible for this is not what this is about. If you are listening to this and thinking, oh, I really know I should be being a bit more physically active. I know I should do a bit more, but I just don't know where to start and I don't know what to do. You've come to the right place. And hopefully this episode will start to unpick that. And also hopefully you will come back and listen to all the amazing people that I have on this series and, unpick that a little bit. So yeah, it's a bigger, more complex kind of problem. And it's one that I think can't be solved in one way. And I think for anyone listening who knows me and follows me, or who is in the fitness space, you might be thinking like, what is she talking about? Like, I've got loads of pregnant people at my gym, or, I know loads of people that were physically active during pregnancy. What I have to remind myself as I do this work is this is kind of a bubble that some of us are living in, and it's not everyone's reality. So I think it's really important sometimes for me to take a step back and say, hey, like, just because you are feeling equipped to go to CrossFit 3 times a week whilst you're pregnant, many, many people are not doing that. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment. Now, I was going to share some statistics and numbers with you, but I've decided that numbers are not the most important thing. And what I wanted to share is just to kickstart this series and to really strip it back, is to share some key benefits of exercising whilst you're pregnant. And basically, this podcast is called Pregnant and Strong. And the reason for that, and the reason for my kind of work all being under that umbrella of Pregnant and Strong, is that being strong mentally and physically in pregnancy is about so much more than how your body looks, even how your body feels. For me, it's about preparing yourself for the journey that your body's on, what it's about to go through in terms of birth and that postpartum recovery. So when I work with women, I say, do you want to be ready for birth? And women are like, of course. I want to be as strong as I can for birth. And that is honestly the most important thing. And that's the number one takeaway from this episode. If you feel like I'm going to have to go through this and I want to feel as physically and mentally strong as possible, then well done for making it here. So this is what I've been having lots and lots of conversations, and it's kind of what sparked this podcast with women. One woman came to one of my classes last week that I'm coaching at a new space in my local community. And she said to me, Iona, I just feel really disconnected from my body. I don't really feel like I have any strength in my muscles, and I just don't feel connected. I don't feel connected to what's going on. And if anyone, hopefully, all those pregnant people listening are thinking, that's me. I remember the first time I was pregnant in particular, just like your body's changing, but it doesn't feel like your body because you've not experienced this before. And this lady was saying, I just want to make sure. I suddenly just thought, oh my God, birth is going to be really, really tough. Labor is going to be really, really tough. And I don't feel ready at the moment. And I thought it was such an honest conversation that we were having. And it just made me realize how much I love my job even more than normal. But the fact that she came to that class and was able to share that. And the focus of that class was predominantly on connecting to the breath, pelvic floor, and core engagement and coordination and strengthening. And she sent me a lovely email the next day saying, I've got all the good types of aches. I felt much stronger even after one session. I connected with my breath. I could feel my pelvic floor. And for me, this was just such a huge win because I think it shows the root of where I'm trying to get to, is that exercise is not about keeping our pre-baby figure or bouncing back or, controlling that calorie intake, or I'm eating for 2, so I need to exercise. It's about, do we want to feel strong when we get into that labor situation? Yes, whatever our outcome is, and it's really important to note here that every birth story is different. Even 2 people who on paper it looks like they've had the same birth, it's so nuanced and there are so many differences. And yeah, it's wild, quite frankly, that that so many women go through this, but that every scenario is so different and every experience is so different. And we have to be sensitive to that. My view is, and it is my opinion, if we can put ourselves in the best possible state, both physically and mentally, to go through labor, whatever that journey looks like, whatever those wild few days looks like, we're going to be in a better position. So, there are some statistics and studies around, for example, levels of maternal physical activity and length of early labor. And you'll find some people say to you, I was really physically active and I had to be induced and I had to have a C-section. And I agree. It's a lot of these things are completely out of our control. There can be lots of wild scenarios that happen. But even for those people I know, both my clients and friends that I've worked, or people I've worked with that have had pretty intense situations, if they have been mentally and physically strong going into it, they have recovered quicker and been able to kind of deal with the situation better. I mean, that's obvious, right? Isn't it? Because as we go through life, if we're lucky enough to be feeling mentally strong, we can cope with a lot more than if we're feeling vulnerable. And that's why my approach is very holistic, and hopefully the guests that I'm going to talk to are going to really help with that. And we'll talk about some tools that help with that mental strength and bringing that calm and balance as we approach the birth. But I think it's really important that we equip ourselves. So back to the benefits. I could just list off a whole, ream of studies and lists and statistics, but I'm just going to go through the ones that I think are the most important. So for me, the biggest win is, and there's been quite a few studies, and the research around women's health is, failing us, quite frankly, but there's been a deep connection between physical activity and mental health. And we know that from non-pregnant people. We know that from the general population, that the impact that physical activity can have on our brains and our hormones, and how it can support reduce depressive episodes, help manage anxiety, reduce, mood imbalances in perimenopause, all those kind of things. We know that. And within pregnancy, it's exactly the same, but it's actually more startling that being physically active can reduce your chances of postpartum depression by up to 60%. And for me, that's just a statistic that blows my mind and stays in my head with every conversation that I'm having with people. That why is exercise and physical activity not promoted more by the healthcare system if we can reduce that postpartum depression? And again, there are some things that happen postpartum that will completely sideline you. I know from my own experience, quite a few people that have suffered from significant postpartum mental health issues and challenges who've never had experienced any challenges with their mental health before. It's your hormones are literally wild. So you want to do what you can to help regulate those. And I think something needs to be made. This is something that needs to be promoted more and, sung from the rooftops, that just by being a little more physically active, you can reduce those chances of postpartum depression and anxiety. And as well as the kind of mental illness side of things, just the link between mood boosting and physical activity is also huge. So studies have shown time and time again that those women who are more physically active suffer less from kind of baby blues, which shall not be put in the same bracket as postpartum depression, psychosis, or anxiety. So I think that's the first one that I would always share. The second one, which maybe wouldn't have been the most glamorous or important one that I would have shared before, but I've started really upskilling myself and doing a new pre and postnatal qualification with Hatch Athletic. I'll put the names of these resources in the notes so that you can have a look. They're an amazing organization, and their qualification has, quite frankly, enhanced my coaching and upskilled me so much so far. And the second benefit is all around pelvic floor and the kind of the impact of pelvic floor weakness postpartum. So levels of physical activity correlating to levels of incontinence and pelvic floor weakness and pelvic floor symptoms, dysfunction symptoms postpartum. So breaking that down, the more physically active we are, and in particular, there's a relationship between resistance training and pelvic floor training, which you can do in full body movements like squats. There's a particular relationship between that and the dysfunction we might suffer postpartum. So that leaking we might suffer from, we sneeze and we might leak, or we run or we walk, those kind of things. And I just think this is huge. I think lots of people get told when you get pregnant, start doing your squeezes, start doing your Kegels, but there's not much information and kind of expertise around weight training or resistance training or being physically active and strengthening that pelvic floor and pelvic floor training. And a lot of the work that I do in classes is around core focused work. And by that, I don't mean like ab training and getting ripped. It's about strengthening your deep core muscles, engaging, coordinating, strengthening your pelvic floor muscles, which is part of your core. So the statistics are, there's a lot of studies and a lot of emerging research around how doing these exercises, full body movements in pregnancy, can reduce our chances of postpartum pelvic floor dysfunction. Isn't that what everyone wants? I actually had an amazing conversation with a woman at the gym who we're also going to be doing some collaboration with, who works with pregnant women and postpartum women and babies on different therapies. And I was talking to her about the importance of core and pelvic floor. And we were both saying we should just title the class "Don't want to piss yourself after you've had a kid." And it's true. I know it sounds really vulgar, but it's true. And it's not talked about, and we are not educated enough, and there's not enough support either to prevent or to treat it. And we need to do something about it. So my classes really, really focus on that. So that's the other benefit. And what I'm going to do is put a little free little core, body weight, core and pelvic floor workout for you as a treat in the notes at the bottom. So it's from my new online platform that I'm developing, but I'm going to give you a little present at the end. And there's some other benefits things around, as I said, reducing early stages of labor if you're more physically active. There's lots of studies to indicate, but that if a woman is maternal physical activity levels impact things like gestational diabetes, weight gain in pregnancy, all those kind of things. But I think it's very hard to pinpoint that, because ultimately, if someone's super physically active, they're probably making better choices with what they eat and those kind of things. So it's hard to pinpoint one thing, but ultimately, the key benefits for me to take away are pelvic floor dysfunction. Let's try and decrease it for everyone as best we can, and mental health benefits. That is seriously the two takeaways. Okay, right. We're going to move on to my little ending of things that we're going to share each week. So first thing is resources and people to follow. You want to fill your feed with kind of inspirational people and people that are fun light-hearted and informative, and cut through the crap. So these are my 2 that I want you to go away and follow straight away. I've mentioned them already. Hatch Athletic and This Woman Lifts. I'm going to put both of these in the comments. This Woman Lifts is my favorite person to follow on Instagram. She comes up with some absolute blinders. She's got a really good balance between humor and hard hitting messages and breaking down barriers and changing the narrative. So she is an awesome one to follow. And my practical tips. So one of them I've already mentioned, core and pelvic floor, guys. If you're pregnant, do it, and don't just do your squeezes. So I'm going to share a little video with you. All my videos are designed to be repeated. So even if you just repeated this every week, you're going to be in a good place, guys. So I'm going to share that. But get some advice, go and see a women's health physio, get some exercises. Worst case scenario, go on ChatGPT and ask for some good core exercises for the trimester you're in. I don't normally endorse this, but do it. Ask someone, for advice. Little and often can be the best way. Now, I'll talk a lot about this over the series, I'm sure. It can be really daunting to be like, oh God, I've got to go to a gym class. I'm going to have to sign up to a gym. I'm going to have to work out for an hour. I've got a toddler. I'm pregnant. This is just too much. I've got a full-time job. So what I say to lots of my clients and lots of the people I work with is little and often. If you did 5 to 10 minutes a day, you would definitely feel better than doing no minutes a day. So if you can take anything away from this episode, I want you to sit down with the little video that I'm going to put in the notes, and I want you to have a go at it. It's 15 minutes. And I want you to maybe think about doing this once this week, once next week. You might, if you don't have 15 minutes, you may be able to do it once and then just think, I remember 2 of those exercises Iona did, and I'm going to go back to those. Okay. Even a bit of deep breathing in the morning when we first wake up, a bit of stretching, something little and often to get going. So those are my 2 tips to kickstart the series. And just where you can find me, and I'll make sure that I get all my guests to share this, where you can find me on Instagram, Strong with Iona Mumby. And I've got a website. If you type that in, you can find it. But yeah, most of my stuff is on Instagram. And please feel free to comment on the podcast, send me a message, share your thoughts. I'm really excited to put this out there in the world. And hopefully from this episode, you've got like a couple of little tips. And also you've just got a sense of why I'm here and what the conversations are going to be like. And I'm really, really, really excited about you joining me on this journey and being part of these conversations. And yes, that is it for episode 1. So go away, click on the little video at the bottom, do your little core session, and let me know how you get on. And have an amazing week, month, wherever we're at. And I will see you next time. Take care. And thank you so much for joining Pregnant and Strong. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening, my Pregnant and Strong team, to another episode. It's fantastic to have you here. I'd love you to subscribe and share. It's going to help us spread the message far and wide, and also just share with anyone you know that might be on this journey, because I know there's not so much out there about these kind of topics that we're talking about on this podcast. So I'd really love you to share an episode or the link with someone you know, a friend or family member, and I'm really hoping it brings you some help, support, comfort at this stage. And please do comment, get in touch on Instagram. All the details are in the show notes, and I'll see you next week.